school, if you look at it's not a beautiful long-term data set either, right? So that's really a problem. And make sure that we're there's no communication. Maybe this could be a potential. Exactly. Maybe somebody will see this and say, "Yeah, we find it. You should at our site." Yeah, we're like what was the issue? You just couldn't get in touch with people, or they said,
all right, Daniel, I think I'm going to go ahead and introduce you. Are you ready?
I am.
All right.
Okay.
We are ready to begin. Everyone, hi. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Daniel Garijo, who is a postdoc with the OntoSoft project, and he's going to give us an overview and introduction to software.
Michael asked you.
Hello. May I start now?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
All right. So, hello everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but well, today I'm going to be like driving you through the OntoSoft presentation and a small tutorial to be able to describe successfully your software metadata. I've been told that, oh, well, I'm going to take this out of the screen because I think you were seeing that as well. So first of all, can my presentation be seen?
Yes.
All right. I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
All right. So just to get us started is that I think that probably all of you have been in this situation, right? Where you start a new project and then your supervisor or your boss tells you, well, don't worry because we have a ton of code that is already existing. You won't have to worry that much and you can reuse all of it. But then you find out that there are no instructions on how to use it. When you go and see the code is hardly documented. Finally, and most important, sometimes you don't even have sample files to actually run the code. So what many people end up doing is that in the end, they have to rewrite everything from scratch because they are unable to reuse what they are given, right? And this is a pity because actually what we find ourselves is that there are a lot of projects where national agencies spend a lot of money investing money to actually do some research that actually has to be then redone because the software itself or the data is not available, right? And this also has other implications. We have seen how this may have an impact on human lives if the software or the computations or in general the resources that are used within an experiment are no longer available when they need to reproduce the study, right? And we have seen an increasing number of retracted studies that are precisely not reproducible, and because of this, they had to be retracted from the original journals. This has also had some impact in some financial journals. I don't know if you remember this news that there were some time ago where a couple of Harvard professors were like questioned by a student because he needed the data in order to try to reproduce a study that they had done, and it turned out that they had forgotten in some of the rows to add some of the rows of the data to the final result, and that affected a little bit to the final results that they were reporting in their paper. So some comic hosts were saying, well, what happened? What is happening now? We can't even trust Harvard professors, right? So the thing is that it's not that these things are done on purpose. Sometimes it's just the ability of precisely exposing all this information is what actually allows to detect some of these errors that well, sometimes are not, well, most of the times I would say are not made on purpose. Plus reproducibility, of course. So we did some of these exercises as well. So I can tell you that I have spent a lot of time trying to actually reproduce the work from some other people. And actually, in this work in particular, it's an exercise that we did with a professor from UCSD that had all the software data sets and the paper online, so for everyone to actually reproduce, and they claim that all the experiment was reproducible. What we found out is that even after having all the sources, and the sources were documented, plus we had the expertise of the authors into guiding us in as part of the work, it turned out that, well, certain things that people think are implicit in the code are not always that explicit for everyone else. By this, I mean that, well, authors may think that data cleaning step that it's kind of obvious, but it may not be obvious for the person who is reusing the experiment. And what it turned out by doing this exercise is that we detected that, well, half or more than half of the experiment wouldn't have been able to be reproduced without several expertise that was required from the authors, right? Plus, it took a lot of time to reproduce all this work. So, given that as a starting point, where are we in terms of software, right? What we are trying to say here is that, well, producing software costs time and money. And right now, there are repositories for storing software code. And these repositories may be like particular for your area, or they are may be more general, like GitHub, right? Or Apache projects, where you can just push it from the community point of view. But the problem is that most scientists are not aware of the value of their software. There are many excuses why scientists may not share their code. I mean, I will be giving you some of them later, but the problem is that this is also a matter of awareness, right? Because if you think that your model might not be important enough, then your paper may not be reproducible, right? Or data preparation takes up to 80% of a person's effort whenever you are setting up an experiment. If you don't document these data preparation steps, and if you don't put your scripts that were used to clean the data somewhere, then somebody will have to spend another 80% of their time to figure out, all right, bless you, having to figure out what did you do. And this also happens with the visualization software, which may not be considered usually very important, but it is, because it is what is used to actually make others understand what the data looks like. And this is what we always put in our software papers, right? We put the pretty figures, but we need to know how the pretty figures were produced. And well, this has led to the term of dark software, which is the counterpart of dark data, which is all these software codes that may be kind of implicit in one's research, but that are not often exposed by scientists. So there are many reasons, as I was saying, why software is not shared. Here you can see a bunch. Sometimes it's shame, like people say, oh, my code is really bad, or my code is not ready to be shared. Well, yeah, but at least it's something, right? It's something that helps. I mean, we understand, the rest of the community understand that we are not software programmers, so the code might not be perfect. Well, and even I'm a computer scientist, so you would have to see much of the code that computer scientists do as well. So I can assure you that there is no shame in sharing your code as long as it does what it has to do, right? So, well, other excuses can be found here, which is that, well, yeah, it just takes me time and people ask me a lot of questions. Or I work for the government and I cannot share my code, or simply that I don't know where to start, right? And this is the situations that many people found themselves in, and this is what we are going to be tackling mostly in this talk. I'm going to be guiding you on where to start for actually sharing and describing your code. Before going into the details of the presentation, I wanted to make a distinction between two main concepts, right? What we call software repository and software registry. So a software repository is where the code lives, is where, like GitHub, right? Where you just create a new repository and you just put your code there, and you may or may not describe it in a manual way. Nothing is machine readable except for the license. I think that there is no explicit metadata, because I don't know if you have tried to search for something in GitHub. It's extremely difficult to find anything unless you actually know what you're looking for. And then there are software registries, and software registries aim to capture the metadata of software, and they kind of decouple, right? Keeping the storage of the software versus describing the software itself. And the good thing about software registries is that this metadata is structured in a machine-readable manner, so later doing additional searches would be very easy, and also comparisons. So here below you have some examples of software repositories and some examples of software registries. And normally when we are talking about software registries, these are more community-driven, right? They are maintained by a small community, and that's why in general they are more successful for this particular task, because GitHub, for example, is super successful at storing code for researchers and non-researchers. So in this talk, I'm going to be talking about OntoSoft, which is a software registry that we have created here at ISI to help you describe your software through a set of questions that, that are very easy to answer. I mean, you just, some of them, I mean, answering all of them might be a little bit tedious, but it's not necessary to answer all of them. And you just need, the more you answer, then the more metadata we will have to actually make sure that your software is findable. So some of the features of OntoSoft are that you have all this metadata to complement the code repositories where they live in. This metadata, we try to organize it in a science-centered view, so it's easy for scientists to know what they are dealing with. We try to divide the different OntoSoft portals to ensure that they are curated by different communities, and we have successfully deployed OntoSoft, I think, in more than 8 small communities that create their own repositories. And we also train scientists on best practices, such as this tutorial, right? So let me tell you, by the way, here are 2 links. The one on top is the general link to OntoSoft, and the one on the bottom is the link that we will be using for the tutorial, and in general is the deployment of OntoSoft portal that we have done for that tutorial. So I think that Christine has more details here, and she will be able to guide you in detail. But these slides are online. I had the link. I put the link in the chat, and if you access them, then you can just click and go there. All right. So what we did was that we divided the metadata of software in 6 different categories that tried to basically group all the metadata that we wanted to answer from a scientist regarding software, right? the first one is how do you identify the software? That is, how do you give it a unique description? What is the project? What is the project page? What is the name of the software? What does the software do? What are the keywords for the software, right? In general, things that would help anyone locate software. Then we have the category of understanding, which is how do you relate it to other parts of domain domain knowledge. Who has been involved in the creation of this software, who has contributed to the software, etc. Then the next category is how do you actually execute this or do research with this? Sorry, how do you actually execute this software? Which is how can you access the URL of the executable? What are the instructions for installing the software, if any? And then what are the things or the parameters or test data that you can use to actually run the software itself? Then we added a category for doing research, because this is important for us, of course, and for any scientist. You don't only want to run the software, the target software, but you want to understand how, for example, it can be composed to other software, such as visualization software. So, for example, if I run a package for producing some tables, which software has been typically used with the software that I'm using to actually produce the fancy plots that I want to put in my paper, or how to do experiment in general, how to run with other data. How shall I cite the software, which is quite important for people who are developing this particular piece. So basically, this way, even if you have a simple script, if the script gets someone wants to give the script some credit, they will be able to cite you. And finally, the last two categories are on how do you get support from the community. This is something important when you want to compare different alternatives and want to know whether this software is still maintained. And that's also related to the final category, which is how often does the software gets updated. For example, whether it has a scheduled release every couple of months. How do you track the different versions of the software, and so forth. Okay, any questions so far?
Nope, no questions yet.
Nope. All right. Glad that everything is clear. So I'm going to give you an overview of all the things that you can do with OntoSoft, and then don't feel overwhelmed by this, because then we are going to go step by step, slowly, showing you how to do every of these steps. And in general, it's not like the tutorial will be very long, because it's quite easy. You just have to click in a couple of places to have all the functionality. It's just more about filling a form, and that's the main way how we get the metadata, right? So this would be like a general view on how software is described. I don't know if you can see. Can you see my mouse? Yeah, so in this case, this is the name of the software, which is 3DDI, and we are in the category, in the execute category, in particular in the install part, right? So each of these categories will have like a set of questions that record the metadata, and most of these questions are, you can just answer them, well, in normal text, right?
I guess we're not seeing your mouse.
We can't see your mouse. Try holding down the control key while you click on the screen.
Well, I mean, it's not that critical. The little triangles that you can see on the donut on the left of the screen indicate also the completion of the software. So, for example, if a donut has like a red part, it means that some metadata fields have not been added. And in general, all the metadata fields are represented as questions. So when you answer the questions, we just gather the metadata for each of them. All right. So a very cool thing, or at least I think it's a very cool thing of OntoSoft, is that you can set up who edits the metadata of each of your software entries. So, for example, you can select as a whole who edits the who has been registered in OntoSoft can edit all the metadata entries as a whole of your software, or you can select individually by metadata questions. So, for example, if you just want people to be able to edit the description of your software, but you don't want them to be able to edit the license, because that's something that you know for sure it will have like an Apache license, and it won't change, right? So you can set up this by setting the appropriate permissions. And this follows the standard ontology developed by W3C, which is called the Web Access Control Ontology. And well, this is just going a little bit into the details, but that's the technology that is underneath all this handling of permissions. You can also find software. Since we have all this metadata well structured, then you can add keywords, favorite languages, and what happened here? So you can add keywords, language, or licenses that you want to filter by. It's basically adding a set of filters based on the metadata fields that have been used when describing software, or keywords. For example, here we are looking for hydrological models or hydrology models that are written in C++ with a general public license. And these are the results that can be found in the general software repository. And since we also have all the metadata, what we can do is that we can compare entries according to the metadata. And here you can see different, I think these are hydrology models. And for each hydrology model, which may have a similar purpose, but they may be a little different, you have like a description of what, for example, what are the operative systems they run on, depending on the model you are looking for, right? Which might be something that you are interested if you can only operate with certain types of operative system. This also gives you an overview of where is the test data, what are the instructions for each of them, and in general whether they are supported or not supported. You can also do this with different versions of the same software. For example, PIM and PIM-GIS are different. Well, PIM-GIS is what is used for setting up the software, while PIM is just the hydrology model itself. But TAUDEM and WVM set I think they are all other hydrology models. So you can compare a little bit all the entries based on their metadata. And finally, since we don't want to be the gatekeepers for the data, and we ensure that OntoSoft, we will keep OntoSoft as much as we can, but probably nothing lasts forever, then we also allow for everyone to download their metadata. So since you have put the effort in adding all this information in the portal, you are the owner of your data. We don't want to gatekeep anything. And all this is public through a public API, and you can download the data in an HTML format or using more structured formats such as RDF, XML, and JSON. And I will show you how to do this in the next slides. So now, so that's the end of the main presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
Not yet.
All right. So just in case, I prepared a small tutorial which actually drives you step by step. I can go through it right now, and then later, since you have access to the slides, you can try it yourself. But as I said, it's not really rocket science. So the first thing that you have to do is to go to that link that has been pasted before, and probably Christine has annotated somewhere. And then the first thing that you have to do is register in the portal. You can select whatever user and password you want, and then once you're registered, you can start publishing your software. So if you click on the software tab, you will see the existing software list, and if you have logged in, you will be able to publish your software. By clicking on publish your software, you go to this screen, which basically tells you what are the different categories according to what I described previously, and you can start clicking on each of these triangles, which will take you to the different pages with the different questions. If you click on the small user with the plus button, you will be able to set up the permissions, that is, who can edit entries, the metadata of your entry, and then you have the save button for just saving everything. In particular here, if you click on execute and you have a GitHub repository, you can enter the URL of your GitHub repository and then click on get GitHub metadata, which will attempt to extract as much metadata from GitHub as you have in your repository. So for example, typically if you have a license, it will try to get the license, or it will try to get the contributions. I was trying this, I think, a couple of days ago, and I think there is a small bug. Right now, no metadata is being imported, but I've reported this and should be fixed soon. So in the next days, if you try to use this, in theory, it should work. But well, this is typically the way it works, right? So you select the repository, you add it here on the execute tab, and then you get the GitHub metadata. Then some metadata will appear on the top by clicking on find some information from GitHub, and then you will import the metadata that you consider appropriate. So when describing a software entry, you have this is the interface that you have for describing a software entry. I added one for completing one of the categories for reference, one software that I did some time ago, which is used for creating a documentation of ontologies automatically, right? So you just add the name, a short description of the software, categories in which you may add the software, and a project website for the software. And what is important is that if you, for example, some of these questions, you can add several things. It's important that you don't add them separated by commas or something like that, that you just click the plus whenever you want to add, for example, several keywords, and that will open like a new line in the software entry that will allow you to further describe with another keyword or another instance that you have selected. And this is pretty much it. I mean, the cool thing as well is that some of these entries, when the entries are recorded, they will be used for reference as future entries. So, for example, if you have entered some licenses, that we have some licenses there by default. For example, if you start to write Apache license, it will autocomplete, and you will be able to select the license of your software. And this happens for many other fields, as well. So setting up the permissions of your entries, that once you, for example, have saved, imagine that you have saved all the metadata for the identify tab. Now you can set up who can modify the different permissions. So you can set the user that will be able to do anything with your permissions. You can set the type of permission that user has, or whether you want them to come the owner as well. So if you are familiar of using GitHub, this is fairly straightforward, because I mean there are not many different types of permissions. You have, like, I think it's read, write, and ownership, right? And this whole screen is what appears by clicking on the small user with the plus that you can see here. All right. So the good thing is that, as I was saying, you can click on who can modify each of the metadata entries as well, if you are just interested. So in this screen, you can select who adds the permissions for the whole metadata entry, while here you can set who has the power to set a permission. Sorry, here is where you set the permissions on the individual's entries of your software if you are interested. So again, if you want to just allow someone to edit the description of your software, you just click here and set who is able to do so. And finally, as I was commenting before, is just when you are done adding the entry for your metadata software, you can go to the main page of the entry and click on each of the serializations to actually generate, for example, an HTML that you can save and put in your project page, or you can also get the JSON and RDF XML, which are machine readable descriptions, if you are interested on, for example, creating a software registry that aggregates OntoSoft. And actually, this is very interesting because what we do is that since all the softwares are exposed in a public API, all OntoSoft portals can actually read from other OntoSoft portals as well. So you can have in the main portal will aggregate all other existing portals. So everything that you add in any other OntoSoft portal will be reflected there. And this is very powerful because it follows like the distributed architecture of the web, which is very nice. That way, every community focus on their own portal, on their own metadata, instead of having a single silo where everyone goes and edits. So, and the next thing is how to find software with OntoSoft. Well, you just have to go to the page. Since we don't have any metadata entries yet, I didn't use the portal that I used for the previous examples. I just used the general one, and here you just select the keywords and filters as I told you before, and you can search for the software. And finally, comparing software. For comparing, it's very easy. You just have to go to the main list, which is like the portals tab. And I don't know why the slides keep turning. So you just have to go to the main list and then just click on the checkbox for comparing, then check all the entries that you want to compare and click on the button of to compare. And once you click there, you will be shown a page that is similar to this one, comparing the entries according to their metadata. And well, this obviously only shows like the upper part of the entries, but you can find all the metadata all the way down. So it's a very thorough comparison. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Just a quick one on the last slide there.
Yep.
Okay. Am I interpreting it correctly that it has almost all of the identify information, some of the understand information, most of the execute information, none of the do research information, and all of the get support information?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Well, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what the colors mean in that.
The colors, yes. So the colors means the. Oh, can you still see my slides? Oh, let me just put this here. So the colors means the level of completion of the entries, right? So when something is red, it means that nothing in that category has been completed. When something is blue, it means that some things have been completed in that category. And the more blue there is, that means that more metadata is. And then the outer disk means the optional categories. We have some of the categories that are recommended and some of them are optional. If you go to any software entry here, see, you say that these are important and these are optional. So here in green, it will show the ones that I have been completed because I have completed all of them. But here in gray, nothing is shown because I haven't completed yet all the optional metadata fields.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you. Part of the problem is I'm somewhat colorblind, and the red was sort of looking black to me, and I couldn't figure out whether it was good to be black or good to be blue.
Ah, good point. I think that we didn't take that into consideration.
May want to throw a key on that thing. Completed and uncompleted.
Okay, I apologize for that.
We're 11% of the population. So.
Yeah, well, yes, that's an important thing to take into account as well. That's what happens when you just let a bunch of computer scientists design the whole interface.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. A quick question about the organization of the different sort of, I just went and looked at the OntoSoft website, these sort of different sub-repositories, like the IMCR subdomain. Is the software that gets listed in each one of the sort of sub-repositories on the OntoSoft page still get fed into the main repository so that it can be globally searched or indexed? I don't know, maybe I'm not asking the question the right way, but
yeah, I think I understand. I think I understand the question. So, as I said, so we wanted each community to be like the one that curated their own repository, because in general this is easier. So the way it happens is that each OntoSoft repository has a public API, and then the main OntoSoft repository aggregates. I think it's maybe not all of the portals that are listed in the page, but it aggregates several of them. So let me show you an example, because this is very easy to show, and it's easy to understand if I show it. Let me just do this. Okay, OntoSoft. Or if I go and
It's frozen. Daniel, can you hear me? There he is. Okay. All right.
So the reason why it was not loading is because I dropped off, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. So if you go to portals, in the main OntoSoft portal, here you see a list of. Oh wait, this is small. Can be seen properly?
You need to share your screen, I think.
Oh, I have to share again. Sure. Share screen. Okay, start.
Okay, we see your screen now.
Okay, so this is the main OntoSoft repository, and or the main OntoSoft portal, and here you can see, for example, CSDMS, right? That means that this entry has been imported from that other repository, while this one 3DDI it lives on the main OntoSoft. This has been added in this main repository, but that's why each repository has a different color. See, this entry has gone to csdms.ontosoft.org, and this entry in particular is kind of has a different URL than from this one that lives in the main portal. So this portal basically aggregates other existing portals.
Is there a basic controlled vocabulary for software that you suggest using to assign keywords?
What do you mean by a controlled vocabulary for software?
A list of keywords? Yeah, just a list of keywords that are commonly used for describing different kinds of software. Maybe model would be one. And
Okay, so we don't have it at the moment because what we found out is that each community has its own list.
I see. Okay.
Say, for example, in the geosciences, we have terrestrial and landscape evolution. I would have never guessed that as my initial keyword for computer science. You go to computer vision or neuroscience or neuroimage science, it's just very, very diverse. We didn't want to get in there, so we just let each community do whatever they think it's best.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? Looks like we're good. Thank you, Daniel. I really appreciate your time.
No worries. You have any other questions or doubts or something is not working, please let me know.
Okay.
We'll try to fix it in the next couple of days.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Who else was in this? Was Noah?